Oakland, California. This is Revolution. And today, this is going to be the audio-only podcast from a discussion we had with a young person named Stefan Bertram-Lee. Imagine, if you will. That's as close as I'm going to get to Rod saying. Imagine, if you will. So check this out. When booking shows, it is a family affair. I want people to understand that. A lot of it is me, but I do get some help from the people that you see involved with the show. Jean Bajlan, Crüe, Boris Pascal, Crüe Reed. There's help. It's not just me anymore. So there's help. And Jean Bajlan hit me up about wanting to do a Rojava show, and he had someone that had went there, and there was a movie being made about him, and he kind of all he said, and I was like, that sounds fine. I'd like to do a show on Rojava because I don't know anything about Rojava. I don't know that much about it. I know about as much as a lot of people that it's supposed to be some sort of socialist, communist paradise, right? And I use paradise with finger quotes. But anyway, Stefan's story is an interesting one because they're a young man, right? As you're listening to the show, there's links in the description to a couple articles about Stefan. And one of the articles that's probably the most prominent one was done in Jacobin. And the Jacobin article keeps centering that Stefan is a non-binary individual that is perpetually online. And then there are questions about it. You know, he's like, I'm in Reddit chats. He's leftist Reddit chat rooms. I'm making memes all the time. I'm fighting with people online. And at some point, they understand that they're just kind of perpetually online. And wants to really do something. And decides, you know what? I'm going to go to fucking northern Syria, Kurdish territory, and I'm going to go fight. That's some bold shit to want to do. It's one thing to, we talked about it on the show because we did it with the Saturday show, and another reason why I want you guys to hear it. The Saturday is what we call the free show. We go a little bit longer on the Saturday show. I think we went about 2 hours on that. And it's usually me, Pascal, Marcus from the Left Flank Vets, Angela Walker from the Green Party, and Paul Prescott of Jacobin. And those guys couldn't make it because I don't like hitting them up last minute. Like, oh, hey, here's all this reading you have to do last minute so you know who the hell's on the show. That was my bad. But Marcus, coming from the U.S. military, is very different than fighting as Stefan fought. And it was interesting to me because you're taking a person, a kid, if you will, that didn't even come from an environment where guns were normal or guns were part of the culture. He's from the UK. I've been to the UK. Spent a good amount of time in the UK. Actually, was involved in a police skirmish thingy in the UK. I won't get too much into it on this. Listen to the show. I'm sure I've talked about it before. And one thing that surprised me was that the police didn't have guns. They were coming in to break up a violent situation in the house I was in, and no firearms were used. So I did see firearms in the UK, at the airport, but it definitely wasn't as common as they are in the United States, especially in open carry states. Another thing I spent way too much time in is goddamn open carry states. Why do you need your pistol at Chipotle? Anyway, to not have any sort of, knowledge of firearms or explosives or even just being out in the wilds, if you will, of nature, this young person goes all the way to northern Syria and becomes part of the Kurdish army. Fascinating story. Fascinating, very sharp. Had a lot of fun. And the sad part, we talked about this for 2 hours because there's a few things that I was just kind of like, wow, that's so crazy. And then we took calls. So as you're going to hear a few calls come through on the show. If you want to be a part of that, if you want to call in and ask questions to the guests, one way to do it. You got to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. YouTube.com/This is Revolution Podcast. Every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific time and every Saturday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. You can be part of the conversation. We had a few calls. It was fun. Then once the show is over, my phone continued to ring. If you are enjoying the content and you want a little bit more, because there is special content we create, we're going to do another Nerd Night episode this weekend as you're listening to this. Patreon.com/Bitter Lake Presents. If you have the means, you're so inclined, and you'd like to help the show grow, you'd like to get all this extra bonus content, there's one way to become a patron. So I'm going to move out of the way. Enjoy this show. It was a fun show. There was a lot of jokes. And I am out.
Welcome. Happy Saturday morning, everybody. We have a very, very packed house tonight. Today, Jesus, been up so long. So let me bring in the party people of the Saturday crew. First and foremost, when he's not mau-mauing the Black bourgeois elite, he is writing for Black Agenda Report. He's co-hosting a show, and he should be writing his book. He is Pascal Robert.
Peace and greetings to the chat. Peace and greetings, Jason Ma. Peace and greetings to the audience, my brother. How are you doing, my brother?
I'm doing great. And also, he is the Black man in Maine. You can take that however you want to take it, because he's so wonderful, because of a quota system. But he is the Black man in Maine. Marcus from the Left Flank Vets.
Marcus.
What's up? How we doing, y'all?
And last but not least, coming all the way live from Springfield, Missouri, You may know him as the man that turned out the majority report with one phone call. Some may know him as their doctorate advisor. Is he Professor Jean? Or is he Mean Jean Bajlan?
Hello, everybody. It's nice to see you all on this fantastic Saturday morning. I actually don't have any PhD students, thank God, because my institution doesn't do PhDs. But I'd like one day to have academic progeny, perhaps. You know? Not in the same way as Cornel West engages in academic progeny.
Hey, whoa.
Damn.
No.
Whoa.
You just starting out hot. I mean, like, you know, well, it's like that thing is like, I guess, Mean Gene. It's Mean Gene. It's not Dr. Gene. It's not, hey, how you doing? It is Mean Gene. Got it.
Mean motherfucking Gene.
All right.
Mean motherfucking Gene. So before we bring in our guest, who Gene pitched it to us, he was like, hey, I know this guy. Let's get this guy. I think we can get this guy. Sorry, my son just came in here.
Was it Phoenix?
That was Phoenix. My son just came in here to yell. He's very excited about our guest today as well. I'm reading about him and I'm watching all these videos and I'm going down this rabbit hole. So to get you guys ready, let's watch the video, shall we?
Syrian civil war has been one of the bloodiest civil wars of the decade, leaving hundreds of thousands of dead and millions displaced. The conflict, which originated in a rebellion against Syrian dictator Bashar Assad, has since spiraled into a seemingly endless cycle of violence, drawing in a number of international players in from Turkey, Iran, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Russia, Great Britain, and the United States. The war is often portrayed as being between a ruthless secular dictatorship and an opposition that has, over the years, come to be dominated by the most brutal and hardline Islamist groups, most notably ISIS. However, in Syria's predominantly Kurdish inhabited northeast, known locally as Rojava, a different political force emerged, the YPG, a libertarian socialist militia that came to prominence in the context of the fight against ISIS. Although heavily criticized by elements of the Western left for its military alliance with the United States, the organization also attracted support from many anarchists and socialists who went to fight alongside the Kurds. This week on This Is Revolution, we speak to one such individual, Stefan Bertram-Lee, about what inspired them to join the Kurds and what they found when they arrived in Rojava. This is Revolution.
I also want you guys to know it's very hard to make a guitar sound that ugly. So when we talk about radicalizing people and the left and the online left, that's why today's guest to me is just so interesting. How does one go from being, even as they put it, perpetually online to saying, fuck it, I'm about to go do some real shit? So coming all the way live from the UK, Stefan.
Hello, friends.
You're just going to be Stefan, just like Prince.
Good.
Peace and greetings, Stefan. Hey, Stefan, before we actually go into your personal narrative, and I know this might sound so pedantic, and I'd like Gene to jump in. Can we give context to what Rojava means, where it is, what is its significant appeal, particularly the people on the left, and what exactly is the YPG? Let's define some terms for our audience. So before how you got into this particular geostrategic battleground. So I don't know if Gene or yourself would want to take that on, but let's put this in a broader context for our audience.
Good question.
Certainly, we need to be doing some kind of acronym tutorial. So YPG or YPG, I might end up saying how it's pronounced in Turkish and Kurdish. YPG is kind of the main military force in Rojava. Rojava I'll explain in a minute. SDF, or I say that one in English, is kind of the broader umbrella force. That's a combination of Kurdish and Arabic kind of democratic forces in Rojava. PYD or PYD is the political grouping, which the main political party in Rojava. PKK or PKK is the kind of the original kind of Kurdish Workers' Party and still operates in Iraq and Turkey. KJK KGK is kind of the umbrella organization that all these groups are a part of.
Okay, so thank you for making those distinctions. I don't know if Gene wants to jump in, but explain Rojava particularly.
Okay, Rojava.
The history of how this developed, the basic details.
Well, what you need to know is the term Rojava, literally in Kurdish, means west, right? And so when Kurdistan was sort of split up into the different, different parts were given to different nation states following the end of the First World War, Kurds, rather than talking about Turkish Kurdistan, Iraqi Kurdistan, Syrian Kurdistan, or Iranian Kurdistan, they prefer a language which talks about North Kurdistan, which is Turkey, South Kurdistan, which is Iraq, East Kurdistan, which is Iraq, and West Kurdistan, which is in Syria. So Kurdish nationalists sort of try to reject the kind of nation state logic, although kind of saying North, South, East, West Kurdistan is sort of a tacit acceptance of that partition, because geographically there are parts of Syrian Kurdistan, the Turkish Kurdistan, that are further west than in Syrian Kurdistan. But it's a kind of vocabulary used by nationalists to reject the nation state logic of the region. So Rojava, which is not the official name of the autonomous region that exists in Syria today, comes from the terminology that Kurdish nationalists use to talk about the partition of Greater Kurdistan. So, Kurdish nationalists won't say, for example, Turkish Kurds or Iraqi Kurds. They will say Bashuri and Bakuri, which means northerners and southerners, right? In order to kind of reject the imposition of the nation state. And in each part of Kurdistan, there has been the emergence of distinct sort of political movements. Like Iraqi Kurdistan has its own parties, Iranian Kurdistan has its own parties, Turkey, Syria has its own parties. But there is always some kind of overlap between these organizations, both in organizational terms and in political terms. So, for example, the Kurdistan Democratic Party, which is the kind of dominant party in Iraqi Kurdistan, originally began life in Iran, and eventually split. And so there's actually an Iranian Kurdistan Democratic Party and an Iraqi Kurdistan Democratic Party, which have similar origins but are different organizations. Now, in terms of Syria, the PYD and the YPG, they have sort of overlaps in terms of ideology, history, and personnel with the PKK, the Kurdistan Workers' Party, which is a movement that fought primarily against Turkey and for a number of reasons was able to operate in Syria. But also, so they are linked, but they're also distinct organizations as well, as they have like their own policies. So the Kurdish politics is divided according to the international frontiers, but there is overlap. And as I'm sure Stefan can explain to you more, it can get even a little bit confusing for people who are involved. So, for example, the PKK is a terrorist organization, and if you join the PKK, you get your ass slammed in jail, right? The YPG, sometimes they're like, oh yeah, YPG people are fine, but also sometimes they'll put them in jail, saying that they're working with the PKK. The military leader of the YPG and the Syrian Democratic Forces, at one time in the past, fought with the PKK. So it's there's a lot of
Deep state.
But yeah, so we have this kind of complex situation.
So, for out of a hope for some simplicity, basically the Rojava is one of about 4 or 5 Kurdish nationalist movements that manifest itself in Syria, while there are other parallel movements that manifest themselves in Iraq, in Iran, and in Turkey.
Rojava is a part of Kurdistan. It's the western part of Kurdistan, the part that's in Syria.
Are all of these movements part of Kurdistan? Would that be correct?
All the kind of movements that Jean has mentioned are in Kurdistan. They operate in Kurdistan, and there's a broad divide between the Kurdish liberation movement, which is YPG, is PKK, and so on, and then the other groups that Jean was mentioning, like KDP, are kind of the more traditional, like Kurdish nationalists. So there's this divide between Kurdish nationalists.
Here's the $8 million question, which may be a simple question for you. Are the state leaders of the nations that these smaller Kurdish nationalist movements exist in generally antagonistic to the Kurdish independent? In other words, is Assad opposed to it? Is Erdogan opposed to it? Are the mullahs opposed to it? Are the leaders in Iraq opposed to it? In other words, generally speaking, are these considered rogue forces by the governing powers in the respective nations that they exist in?
In everywhere but Iraq, these groups are illegal, more or less.
Mm-hmm. And it's important to understand that, occasionally, like, for example, Syria backed the PKK in Turkey for like opportunistic reasons. Iran backed the Kurds in Iraq. Iraq backed the Kurds in Iran at various times. But in general, yes, these forces are kind of anti-systemic forces. And of course, their posture in international terms has varied according to which state they're fighting against. So the KDP in Iraq was more conservative orientated, because partly because they were fighting a central government that was anti-American. In Turkey, the PKK is kind of more radical because they're fighting like NATO's second largest army as well. So there's different sort of international postures. But I think one thing that, and Stefan has alluded to it, it's important to understand is some of these Kurdish political parties are very much your like traditional nationalist parties, right? Like KDP in Iraq, they want to have a nation state or an autonomous region, but they want something that is akin to a nation state. The PKK in Turkey, from which the YPG sort of, at least intellectually, has its origins, that too used to be a kind of traditional left-wing nationalist party, asking for a united, independent, socialist Kurdistan. But in recent years, that wing of the movement, which Stefan will call the Kurdish National Liberation Movement, rejects the nation state as a model for the solution of the Kurdish question. So there are some Kurdish political forces that, although they want Kurdish rights, they believe that the nation state is not the vehicle through which those rights can be achieved. And Rojava is the center of that.
We're going to go right to
libertarian. We get into the libertarian socialism question at that point, which I think is for us in the States, Stefan. I think when we hear libertarian, the first thing we think of is
right wing.
What'd you say?
Right wing.
I thought you said wing nut. Close enough. So
like slave of children, children working, children slaves, all that kind of stuff.
Don't give a damn about slaves, children slaves, Negro slaves. Everybody is a slave, but them and their mama, they might even hold that broad out. Those kind of guys, generally guys. Actually, a woman ran for president for the Libertarian Party. But when we say libertarian socialism, it's a whole different meaning. Did you want to get into that a little bit, Jean or Stefan?
Well, let Stefan get into it since
that's part of your training, right?
Yeah, I mean, you start off before you can touch a rifle. You get some time of political education, and my commanders told me I exceeded in that. Military stuff less so. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of this idea of. Rojava is a very strange place, and we'll get into it further later on. But it's this very strange structure. It's like if you took a Marxist-Leninist party, kind of this kind of structure, and told them, "Oh yeah, go and do anarchism in a country." So this very kind of strange structure where you have this party, this strict party with kind of like in the party, like obviously we're democratic and so on, but it has this kind of Leninist frame of kind of once you've made a decision, everyone has to follow it and this kind of thing, you know, because we're a military party, right?
Mhm.
But then with civilians in the civil society, there's this very, very libertarian kind of system of kind of democratic management of where you hope you create communes on kind of the neighborhood and the village level, and you hope to give them as many decisions as you can. Any problems they can't conclude among themselves, you kind of move it up to a one level up where they send delegates to a further system, and on and on. So hopefully that kind of the people that are head of the PYD or like kind of like Rojava doesn't really have like a president or anything like this, but it has certain senior figures. And obviously because of the war, because the revolution is underdeveloped and stuff, these people do end up making a lot of decisions. But the hope is eventually that kind of these people at the top of PYD, at the top of Rojava's structure, won't be that kind of relevant in decision making.
And one thing I'd like to
outlook at all?
I'm sorry.
On your politics, did it change your politics when you were getting your political education? Did it open something up for you that you weren't really hip to before?
I went as an anarchist, and I didn't stop being an anarchist when I was there. As anarchist, I left, and it was for a while. But it was kind of the reflections of my time there on kind of anarchism versus kind of, and I basically my conclusion was kind of the party structure that they had there is was very good. It worked basically, I thought, but I didn't really think it was compatible with anarchism. So that was kind of the first step on the road with me moving away from anarchism.
Gotcha. Sorry, Pascal, you wanted to ask a question?
I didn't. It was my fault. I shouldn't have cut you off. But it's very important, I think, for us to explain that anarchism is an intellectual tradition on the left. And for those who are unfamiliar with left political ideology or thoughts or theories, it's not just, oh, there's no government, everything is in chaos. Anarchism centers the governance around the civilians in the state and takes away the bourgeois hierarchy of the nation state political operation and vests that power in the citizens through things like workers' councils, unions, and workspace organizational management. It is not no government. It is no bourgeois hierarchy of governance and rendering the governance to the hands of the civilians. Would you agree, Stefan, with that definition somewhat of anarchism?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of total management of the people by the people, like organically, like management of the self, not no management.
Yeah, I mean, right. I tell people basically, if there was full anarchism, you'd have everyone fed, housed, possibly going to school and stuff like that. But a group of people just arguing over what color to paint the buildings, that's basically what you get at.
So I thought it was a T-shirt at Hot Topic that told my parents to fuck off, but I guess you guys ruined that dream for me.
Sorry.
No.
Committees.
And one of the things I think that we should, I think, since we are on the left, admit is that the appeal of the Rojava project to many of us on the left is that many anarchists, and we have many in the States, were sympathetic to it because, like yourself, of its seeming anarchist functionality. So it became a kind of, I wouldn't say fetish project because I think that's somewhat demeaning, but a certain kind of fascination for leftists in the West because it reminded them of anarchist movements that they aspired to see actually functioning. Would you agree with that, Stefan, or am I off base?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, kind of, the fascinating thing about Rojava is it has this structure where basically everyone can project kind of their hopes and dreams on it, right? Because it seemingly managed to have this revolution without kind of having to like shoot anyone in terms of like landowners or anything like this. And so both kind of like anarchists can project their kind of ideas on it, but liberals can also project their ideas on it. It's kind of just this kind of liberal, like this liberal democratic rose that's kind of sprung in kind of the blasted garden of Syria or anything. So I think it's quite easy for lots of groups to project something onto Rojava.
Can I ask with in regards to like the political training, how I guess, yeah, in more material ways, that political education ended up meeting, or at least your politics prior, and I guess rooted in anarchism, ended up meeting, the underlying ideals through the, like the actual real world conditions that you were living in and a part of.
I mean, it sounds a bit, I guess, slightly pathetic, but one of the main revelations in Rojava was kind of being like a respected member of society. Like kind of before that, I was kind of like an anarchist, very against everything, very kind of nihilistic, very kind of, like kind of against my own culture and things like this. Then in Rojava, it was kind of, we were this respected group who we were kind of fighting for the people, and the people wanted us to be doing this. And it was kind of this experience and like transforming your point of view to realizing like, who are you fighting for? What are you doing this for? That I didn't really realize when I was in the West. I think kind of when I was younger, it was kind of some kind of, I mean, like I was an anarchist, but I think there was definitely kind of this stereotypical kind of anarchic rebellion. When I was a teenager, like I went to Rojava when I was 21.
Was there any because one of the videos I had actually watched about Rojava was done by a libertarian site, at a U.S. libertarian site. And I guess they were sharing it amongst themselves, like this is the libertarian dream. Were there any U.S. libertarians that came out there?
Yeah, there was. He wasn't there at the same time, but I've become friends with him since. But obviously, I think kind of these people do come, but then after the experience with Rojava, they kind of become like centrist libertarians, if you know what I mean. Kind of like I don't know anyone that's gone to Rojava, has come back, and then's become like, it's still very like capitalist, right wing. They normally become like these kind of weird things that are more in the middle.
Does it push them, of course, more? Because I know a lot of the libertarian stance is like no state intervention in any sort of conflicts. I'm assuming that they stay staunchly with that standpoint, but their politics change a little left. Do you think?
Yeah. They don't have driver's license in Rojava.
No shit.
No.
So that's why the libertarians lost their shit, huh? They were like,
that's what we were looking for. Yeah.
I mean, there's checkpoints everywhere that you have to stop for the police, and they'll pull like kids out that are driving, but otherwise, yeah.
And there's something I wanted to ask about after you get done with your political education, you go into actual, like, or at least, maybe doing physical training, but, it seemed very interesting to me, as a Marine vet, when in the article, like in one of the articles written about you, it said that there's never anyone yelling in your face. And that blew my mind because that is, antithetical to everything that I learned, or was trained and everything like that. And so it seemed very real in a way that you can live these ideals really to the core, to like where everything that you're engaging with is respecting of everybody at the very least. But like we've kind of been in this, the way that like these basic human rights are kind of amazing, just because of, so I was just kind of just wondering, like, if you could talk about that and like, just how physical training lived the ideology.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously interesting because obviously you can't, I mean, I guess you can have like an anarchist military, but it's a lot harder there. Kind of, there needs to be people that need to tell other people how to do things. But you're right, that kind of, to the best degree, they kind of do live this kind of thing where, especially because, we're all self-motivated revolutionaries. There shouldn't be a need, if they're shouting at us, like, what are we doing? Like, and things like this, So, but yeah, there's kind of, obviously there are ranks, but there's no rank insignia. There's no saying sir. There's no kind of anything like that. As I said, there's no like shouting or physical punishment for things done wrong. It's kind of like you're expected to motivate yourself. And if you're a massive total idiot, they will eventually send you home. But yeah, you're meant to be kind of a self-motivated, self-acting kind of revolutionary that doesn't need to be shouted at, doesn't need a guy with like a little thing here to do what you have to do.
One of the things that I wanted to get to in discussing these Kurdish independent movements, which has caused some on the left to oppose them, and I want us to be objective and fair, is the level of interface and interaction with the United States trying to perhaps nudge these movements to destabilize governments that are viewed as enemies of U.S. interests. And that interface has viewed these Kurdish independent movements in the eyes of some on the left, rightly or wrongly, as being questionable for their willingness to take assistance from the U.S. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Maybe Gene can intercede as well on, does this in fact occur? What does it mean for the integrity of these movements? Or are they being used, in a kind of duplicitous game, knowingly or not, by the United States? I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, obviously the thing to say is that obviously, the US is using Rojava to try and further their interests. But we shouldn't be silly. We should know, obviously, that PYD and the EPIGAY know that this is happening. And, we live in a unipolar world. The Soviet Union doesn't exist. China isn't China. Well, China's China. We live in a unipolar world, and basically for the Kurdish freedom movement, the main contradiction is kind of Turkey, its local kind of authoritarian forces. And so in this context, the Kurdish freedom movement is willing to collaborate with kind of secondary kind of contradictory forces like the United States. And I don't know, you'd want it not to happen, but then there wasn't kind of an alternative, there wasn't another possibility. And people are saying now, obviously, kind of, why is Rojava still collaborating with the US? Why have they not kind of found a way out of the solution? And I think it's true that kind of Rojava it's in a real bind. It's in a very kind of, I don't want to say it's in a weak position because I don't want to insult the Friends, but kind of, compared to all these other international groups, Rojava's in kind of a very vulnerable position. As I've said before, it's I think someone in the chat's been comparing it to like kind of Idaho in the US, kind of the Kurdish equivalent of Idaho, or another kind of Western state. And one thing my commander said was we expected kind of they expected that Rojava would be the last place to have the revolution. It was kind of the most conservative part of Kurdistan. It was the most undeveloped part of Kurdistan. It was the smallest in population part of Kurdistan. So the fact that revolutions happened here was not the plan of the Kurdish freedom movement, and it's within the midst of the civil war with all these other factors. The movement's in a very strange situation. There's no point pretending otherwise.
Gene, would you like to jump in? I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, my general thoughts is, the reason that the Kurdish movement in Syria was able to operate was because there was originally sort of the tacit, I wouldn't say necessarily support, particularly at the time of the civil war, but Syria often used the Kurdish movement in Syria to basically send off young Kurdish kids who might be angry at the Syrian government to go fight in Turkey, right? So when the civil war broke out and Assad had to sort of focus his fire on more serious threats, they withdrew from Rojava, and they left, they stripped the region of its equipment, and they left it in the hands of the Kurdish movement, which they had tolerated to a certain extent. Now, so this is one of the reasons why they were able to sort of gain a foothold to begin with, and this was a surprise for the Kurdish movement, which had been focusing on Turkey and Iraq, and as Stefan says, there'd been an uprising in 2004, which had been crushed. So people weren't expecting things. Then what happens is you have suddenly the rise of ISIS, and the United States had originally hoped to prosecute its regime change war through the groups supported by Turkey. And Turkey was basically selling these kind of Al-Qaeda adjacent groups, particularly to the CIA. But ultimately, Turkey's plan to build this sort of opposition force collapsed, right? And so with the rise of ISIS, the Defense Department, which was very concerned with what was going on in Iraq, as a last resort, ended up allying with Rojava. And so it was an alliance of convenience because of the peculiar circumstances that emerged following the ISIS's success in Iraq. And of course, over time, that kind of alliance deepened, or there was like more sentiment behind it. But it was always, American policy was always sort of playing catch up with the local intelligence services, whether that was Turkey or Saudi Arabia, which had better on the ground information and had more coherent political agendas on the ground. Whereas you could play the Americans. What the CIA was doing, what the Defense Department was doing, on so on and so forth. But when certain individuals on the American left, when Trump sold out the Kurds, it was like, well, this was always going to happen. What did the Kurds expect? Which none of the Syrian Kurds were like, America is the great ally. But had that not been an alliance in 2014, there would be no Kurds on the ground to be sold out because ISIS would have wiped them out, right? So there's a kind of weird strategic position, because at the same time, America lives this fiction that the Kurdish movement in Syria, which is dominated by the YPG and the PYD, is entirely distinct from the PKK in Turkey, which it isn't. When Turkey complains, that the YPG is part of the PKK, their complaints are not entirely unfounded. So America is pretending as if like there's this group called the PKK that are bad guys, and we will help Turkey fight those guys. But then there's these good guys, and so there's a really huge contradiction in that policy. And I wrote in Jacobin way back that this contradiction would never, would eventually come to a head, and it would come to a head whereby the United States would sell out the Syrian Kurds to Turkey. And I was unfortunately quite correct about that. I mean, like, you can go back, check what I was between Washington and Rojava was a piece I wrote back about that contradiction. But I think, the crushing of the Rojava revolution doesn't benefit anyone on the political left. That would be my I view things from the perspective of Kurds and Rojava, and not from the sort of theoretical perspectives of people sitting in armchairs with well-paid jobs in the media in the United States.
That's fair.
Going off of that, though, is like, when the United States had pulled out, still at the Kurds, and there was like I think a pretty significant swell of pushback from the Americans and even like conservatives, liberals across the board. Certainly a significant like veteran contingent saying like we can't leave and bail out our friends and everything like that. Trump ended up going back on that decision but one of his classic terms is, hey, we're going to get that oil. And then like, if when I like read at the time, ended up there's some, oil companies that ended up getting access to some of these resources that they weren't had previously. So yeah, I guess I wonder too of like what's the vision, what is the vision of that American influence? And, also too, I think like in the picture from some of these articles and stuff like that, I think you're actually wearing camouflage that was like designed by the United States Marine Corps. And so like I think there's like a very real like, oh hey, type of like pass down of like stuff, and like however they got it one way or another. But yeah, I guess how did that, did they people in the Kurdish forces see any difference after Trump had started making those types of like obvious this is for the oil moves?
Well, obviously I haven't been there. I was actually there in 2017 during Trump's first phase, because kind of Obama hadn't really been arming YPG, and then Trump came in and actually gave us like some decent stuff. But one thing to note with the oil thing is 0 barrels of oil were sold by American companies from Rojava. 0, like it never happened. The company that kind of signed a contract was to improve oil infrastructure in Rojava, and Rojava oil is used 100% either for internal consumption within Rojava or it's sold to the Syrian government. So it all stays in Syria more or less, basically. Because obviously Turkey wouldn't allow Rojava to export its oil.
Is it just not producing that much?
Oh yeah, and the production is much lower compared to say Iraqi Kurdistan. It's like 40,000 barrels a day, which is enough for kind of internal consumption in Rojava, and then like a good bit goes to the Syrian government.
So I do want to ask this question. You're a young person in front of your computer, as you say, in Reddit chat rooms, telling people to fuck off, and you're making memes, and a wild bird gets in your britches. Isn't the same thing. I have a friend that went to North Dakota when he saw the Dakota Access Pipeline shit happening. He went there in the winter. And I was like, man, you're from California. It's cold as shit out there. It's like negative 45. I've been there. My balls have frozen. I'm literally at frozen testicles.
And the police are doing crazy shit.
And you go, we're not going to get into exactly how you got there, but you go from the computer bedroom talking shit. And I know how it gets. You talk, man, I'll fuck that motherfucker talking that shit to me. I'm about to meme the fuck out of your ass. Gotcha. To, okay, here's a weapon. Here's your fatigues. What was was there a oh shit moment? This is for real for you?
So to go with the nerd thing, the first time I ever heard of YPG was when I was on the Wikipedia page of the Syrian Civil War, looking at all the actors. And this was early 2014. I was like, damn, there's like a leftist thing there. But I didn't really think much of it because it's hard to care about something when no one else cares about something, right? And then and was the Siege of Kobani started in 2013 and ended in 2014, right? Okay, so this is 2013.
It was in the autumn. I remember like it was very hot in the autumn of 2014. That was when because it was literally when I moved to Iraq in 2014.
Oh, wow.
The thing that happened was like Siege of Kobani, and it was like big news in Kurdistan. The whole of Kurdistan's eyes was on Kobani over that in that autumn.
Yeah, I mean, so the Siege of Kobani started, and this is when everyone heard of Rojava, right? It was in Western headline news like every day, and me and a couple of friends. So my political start was in the Zapatista solidarity movement when I was at university. I think I've got Subcomandante Marcos on. And so I don't know, me and my friends, this small group of kind of anarchist friends, always took kind of international stuff very seriously. And so like on the first Kobani marches, where it was like 40,000 Kurds in London, which is basically all of them, were out marching for Kobani. And me and my friend were like the only non-Kurdish and non-Turkish people there. But from basically the start, kind of like, I was always a person that was like, oh yeah, I would have gone to the international brigades in Spain, and then kind of my Spain came along, so I was like, okay, I have to go. And I don't know, for me, that's obviously mental, but for me, it was kind of like, that was it. And my friend was planning on going, but he never did in the end. So this was in 2014, so I was like, okay, but maybe it was a few months later, because that's when the first volunteers arrived. But I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go if I can, like, and if they'll have me, and like, me being in the military is a useful thing, and they don't want me to do something else. And so I waited until I graduated university, and then I just started making plans. For me, it was kind of quite, the reasons I went, well, obviously it's complicated, it's a long list, but kind of the basis was there from the start. Like, I had this plan for 2 years, and then I went and did it.
The story is, to me, is kind of inspiring and insane all at the same time, right? Because as much shit as we talk about, like people being perpetually online, you actually take that narrative and go, well, I'll show you, and you actually went out there to literally do something and got active. And then in reading your Jacobin piece, it says was it the first night you were there you took fire?
No, that's just how the article opens. But it was during training. It was before I touched a rifle. That kind of the Turkish Air Force bombed the point next to ours.
And you're from the UK, where guns aren't as common as they are here. So I can't just say if you grew up with a gun. I think shotguns are legal there, or is it hunting rifles? I forget.
Well, lots of things are legal, but like people don't have.
It's hard to get a license. It's basically at the police's kind of pleasure.
Someone told me once when I was in a certain house in England that the only people they knew with guns were really, really rich people or drug dealers in the UK.
Pretty much.
Drug dealers, like you have to be a serious drug dealer to get a gun.
Unless you're in Nottingham. They don't call it Shottingham for nothing. No, it's true. Like if you're in a crappy town like my hometown, like Hull, nobody has guns. So you might get the shit beaten out of you on the street. But if you go to Nottingham or Manchester, you got to be a bit more careful because some lunatic might have a gun.
I'm thinking of that Friday scene right now.
You kids is punks.
You fight to live, you live. Okay, but you live to fight another day.
So Stefan probably doesn't know Friday because it literally came out when you were born. Like I graduated high school when you were born. It said you were born in 95. I was like, that is the year I graduated high school. Jesus Christ. You made me feel really old. I just want you to know that. Son of a bitch.
I mean, it's going to stop happening eventually.
One of the questions that I wanted to ask you, Stefan, is that can you give us a description of what the day-to-day life was like in Rojava? What is the infrastructure life? Was there central water, electricity, heating? How did the Rojava governance mechanism, the libertarian socialism, if you will, how did it handle those type of infrastructural problems?
So obviously, we're kind of a people's army, people's militia. So we don't have much, but we had kind of the simple necessities. At my first camp, we had kind of electricity. We didn't have the internet, but our commanders did, because obviously they're the guys that are recruiting people online. So of course they need it. And we led this kind of, simple life, wake up early in the morning, exercise, run around, make our own food. Obviously we didn't have anyone. It's not like the kind of US military or whatever, where you have specialized roles. Like you have you live, because I don't know how it is exactly in Western militaries, but I think that people live kind of in a company size base or a battalion size base, and you have specialists like cooks, and you have, I don't know, I guess in deployments, I don't know how it works with cleaners and stuff. I don't know if the soldiers clean themselves.
I mean, if I could,
Marcus is in the military. He was in Iraq.
But yeah, basically every moment of your life is dictated by another person. There's the idea, and that's just me trying to work through what a boot camp and training scenario would be like. That's not necessarily dictated by someone else. It's wild to me. Because I just generally war fighting's the same, but everything else must be exactly different.
Think about it for a second. Like when we talk about military bases, U.S. military bases, they're like these little cities, and there's third-party personnel. Yes. They're cooking and cleaning and providing all this stuff, and you're getting whatever food you need, whatever shit you need. You're getting. Oh, your sister sent you a care package. There's all the shit that you're getting, and then you're not even from the States to understand that, and then. So that's not even the back of your. That's what's so crazy to me. None of that shit's in the back of your mind. Like even me, I'm thinking about this as I'm reading your story. I'm thinking about this through the lens of growing up in the U.S. and thinking about what military life must be like for someone like Marcus. And I have friends that served, and they told me horror stories when they went to the Balkans and shit like that in the 90s. And your story is even more insane because it's like, nah, man, this is like guerrilla shit almost.
Yeah.
It's
I
like
remember I was after the Turkish airstrikes, we had to during the day we had to hide in trenches and stuff. So I was just hidden in a trench, and I read all of Mao's guerrilla warfare, just sat there, the rifle just there. Me sat there just reading the book, waiting to see what would happen.
I'm not gonna lie, man. I would have been a bit of a shivering bitch because that once I would have heard the first bomb go off and been like, man, where's that bus back home?
I'm in a meeting.
Like I think I bit off more than I could chew.
What about the? Is there a civilian population in Rojava that's not militarily or not, deployed per se? I'm interested in exactly how are their needs met in this governance, this form of governance.
So kind of basic necessities are. That is a good documentary from the chat. The government, or whatever you want to call it, directly provides kind of necessities at like below market rate. So kind of rice, bread, fuel, and then other things. That's what is to us in the West a very radical system today, but it's one we had in the West in the 70s, which is price controls, where you aren't allowed to sell things at beyond certain prices. And obviously this leads to a black market, but obviously for poor people going to a normal store, it's very useful. But obviously it varies, but kind of the places we were living, it was a very, very poor area, where it was kind of, just agricultural workers kind of on quite marginal farmland because it's quite arid, just trying to do what they can. And, not every village kind of has this whole massive governance structure with these 20 different committees. Like our village just had the economics committee and the martyrs committee, which organizes the graves of locals who die in the war, who helps martyrs' families and stuff like that. But they didn't have kind of like a women's commission or like, what are the other ones? Yeah, like a military commission. They didn't have any of this stuff.
And I think part of the thing is you're talking about how people understood that you were the defense, for the area and often utilized and a necessity. The major difference with the United States is that our military isn't used for our general welfare and safety of the community. It is the strong arm of capitalism, and is now the leading, the tip of the spear of empire. So it's kind of but obviously, and this is something that we talk about, from, as leftist veterans, is the fact that a lot of things that they give us in the military is just the basic human rights. Like this should be for all, no matter what while there is a rank structure, everyone gets housing. There's always food, if you can't afford it, there's something cheap for you, X, Y, and Z. But yeah, that's at the tune of up, $750 billion a year, which obviously a different operating budget than you have in Rojava.
So I would also add to Pascal's point. I'd say
I may not.
In some of the sort of larger cities and things, insofar that there is an industrial policy, there's a move towards sort of co-op organization in terms of providing basic things. There's only a limited amount of things Rojava can produce locally anyway. It's not a super resource-rich area, but insofar as they have industrial policy, it tends to be sort of co-ops and sort of limited size businesses as well. So it's kind of, it's not sort of state socialism per se, but it's kind of more this notion of co-ops.
Is it high desert? Is the climate high desert?
No, it's like arid shrub.
Okay.
I was looking at the U.S. climate map for film locations for the movie.
They're filming in the U.S.?
We'll see. Well, me and Connor want it, but we'll see.
They're going to film in Saskatchewan.
Who's going to play you? Or are you not?
I know, but I can't tell you. It's someone very famous.
Is it somebody famous?
It's Thor. It's the Thor dude.
Not like a lister, but it's a big actor.
Did it kind of fuck your head up when you saw that? Oh no shit.
I think it made sense because I think I'd seen them before in one of those what famous celebrity do you look like?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
makes sense.
So it's not Jaden Smith, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, it's not as people are guessing. Yeah, it's not like it's not a woman. It's not a 40-year-old black man or anything like this.
If it was a 40-year-old black man, that'd be fucking awesome. If Idris Elba played you,
yeah,
that'd actually be the best way to get conservatives to watch it. They changed it, this great white person, and they changed it. Oh, how dare they
ever?
Hey, drive up tickets.
Yeah, I'm quite for the idea of adapting stories, and just the actor is just someone completely different. Initially, there was considerations that I might end up American in the movie if the actor couldn't do the accent, but they can do the accent, so it's fine.
I just say boo because that kind of, I think the whole story about you going from the UK, which is, again, guns aren't something you grew up with. The fucking weather isn't something that you grew up with. Like, you motherfuckers don't believe in sun at all. I spent a spring.
I'm looking at the sun right now, mate. I turned the laptop around.
Bullshit. It's probably 20 degrees out in that motherfucker.
Oh yeah, like it's a balmy 19. Oh wait, no wait. In American,
just do it again. I'm gonna do the conversion. I'm gonna do the conversion.
Okay.
No, dude. Look. Again, I spent 3 months there that I thought were going to be nice, warm months because they're decent months where I'm from and where I have a perpetual spring where I live. And I go there, I'm like, it's snowing in April. These motherfuckers live. I'm not built for this.
Yeah, no, it's true. We have brutally few sun hours. Like, we've got less sun hours than anywhere in the United States.
Yeah. And so to go from that shit to northern Syria. It's just like, oh shit.
It was quite warm.
I bet it was. Bet your ass got a tank top and a
Do you
tank.
remember, like, I mean,
oh no, you can't.
like,
that's against morality.
No shit.
Has to be below the elbow.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
really?
Below the elbow. See, this is what I'm talking about. See,
okay,
no.
Okay, tell us more about below the elbow. I read a little bit about your thing where you were talking about there was like rules, and I was like, oh, and then you went to an all-female camp, right? Or am I reading?
Mixed gender.
Okay, sorry.
But yeah, so obviously Kurdistan, and kind of especially West Kurdistan being the most undeveloped region, was, especially kind of when the freedom movement started, like very, very, very patriarchal. But the Kurdish freedom movement wanted to include kind of women in their ranks. And after a few years of kind of trying, they were like, we can't just not have kind of quite strict rules about how this will work, and because it won't work unless we have kind of quite strong rules. So eventually the WINS movement made a decision to kind of segregate themselves on a kind of operational level. So there's the YPG and YPJ, the women's army, is kind of, it has like a separate hierarchy. It's in charge of itself. It does its own orders. But kind of when you're in the field, obviously you normally, women's units are like mixed in with, it's like, it'll be like a squad of women and then 2 squads of men making up like a platoon or whatever. So this is like 5 women, 10 men. But yeah, and obviously when you're kind of together with women, you have to act in a certain way. You have to behave in a certain way with kind of like, you have to be dressed properly, dressed fully. Like, for instance, when we were in Raqqa, it was like, well, on the outskirts of Raqqa, it was like 40 degrees, like 100 in American, I guess. Mm-hmm. And 2 friends were making food in the kitchen, and so they had all the stuff on there, so it must have been 45 Celsius or more, getting up to like 110 Fahrenheit. And so they'd taken off kind of their fatigue top and just had their kind of shirts underneath. And there weren't very many women at the base, which obviously puts them in another worse position. And like a woman came in there, saw them dressed like that, and kind of turned around and left, and then made a complaint.
Wow.
This is not
these are Muslim countries. They still have.
This was the case. This was the case with This was the case with the PKK in Turkey, since their insurgency. One thing that you have to understand, for example, in Turkey, they had a significant proportion of women in the PKK. And one of the ways that they were able to sort of recruit amongst women is by allaying the social fears that people were going up to the mountains and engaging in hanky-panky. This was the propaganda that the Turkish state was putting forward, that, your daughters are fleeing to the mountains and they're all having like orgies up in the mountains with the guerrillas. When in fact there was actually quite
it's orgy free
restrictions within the PKK, and eventually it became the PKK became an avenue that allowed women to escape patriarchy in a way that would allow them to maintain their inverted commas honor. So, if you were a young girl who was going to get married off in the village to some creepy old dude, you could flee to the mountains, and it was an honorable route of escape. So there's been the PKK, the PKK, and of course the YPG. All left-wing Kurdish movements.
Well,
a lot of left-wing movements in the Middle East have been very aware that they can be accused of like sexual immorality, which is counterproductive. There's a joke in Iraq, right? There's a joke in Iraq where there's a bunch of women who are bathing naked in the river, and they suddenly see a group of men coming, and the women scream, and they're like, "Oh my God, men are coming!" And then one of the women looks up and goes, "Oh, don't worry, they're just communists," because they have this like. They had like discipline to This is not always the case. In left, there are certain factions of the Middle Eastern left that pull this kind of bullshit where it's like, hey, if you don't fuck me, you're not really progressive, right? There are certain groups like that. But the more serious and successful movements, whether you agree with it or not, have a certain degree of discipline so that they can sort of forestall claims that they're engaging in sexual impropriety, which you will know in a conservative, and it's not just amongst Muslims, amongst all the communities, Christians as well, are very like sexually conservative in terms of their attitudes. So there's a kind of like there's a strict discipline on this front, and they take it seriously. I mean, I don't know if it's true. They used to say that they used to give them alum. The PKK guerrilla fighters would get alum, which is like something that reduces your sex drive. I don't know if it's true.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they apparently they used to put it in the tea in Turkish universities to ensure people didn't get too horny in the dorms. I don't. Again, it's like one of these urban myths.
I heard that. I hear the same shit heard the same stuff about Marine Corps boot camp. That's like they put something in the water to make sure that you don't get erections.
Marcus is here to tell you.
I think military kind of made up stories are pretty universal. Yeah. Although that being strict on like the uniform, that is like the only, I'd say, similarity that I'd have is that, this strict adherence to uniform discipline and all these things. It's like we're literally wearing the same shit. If I roll up my sleeve one more than the dude over, that's fine. We still know we're still a part of the same team, yeah? But
that's interesting.
Forbidden's a very fun word in Kurdish too, karahe.
Pascal, you okay?
I'm good, man. I'm enjoying the back and forth.
Do you have something you want to say?
No. I've asked most of the questions. So
I was going to say one thing. Like there's on what Gene was saying. There's kind of reports quite often in Western media about kind of Yepigay having like child soldiers, and one of the things that complicates that is as Gene says, like girls in complicated situations run away from their families and join Yepigay, and some of them are underage. And when this happens, Yepigay is very, very reluctant to hand them back to their families, because they'll put them in an even more complicated situation. And so this is why there might be girls in Yepigay that are, young. But obviously, and another thing that complicates things is that Yepigay isn't just a military force. It's kind of this comprehensive thing. So obviously when these girls join Yepigay that might be underage, this isn't they're not shooting people. They're not doing military training. they have a certain place in the structure which they go to, and then they do certain things. Then often they'll end up joining YPG proper when they're older.
I did have a question too about, I guess your secondary military occupation, which was which was memeing. I guess
in the meme wars.
Yeah.
Well, the meme wars.
And that's literally like a joke between that we, like yourself as like left veterans, like we talk all the time about joking about the meme wars. We lost a lot of good people on, but as much as there could be a meme war, you were doing it, which, I would like you to kind of explain, like, a little bit of the background of when, they were asking you to create memes, and like essentially propaganda, but also kind of like your evolution through that, as you kind of, we like to say is like, just don't meme too close to the sun. But you, if you found yourself, or at least, just growing up, good one, Marcus. No, you found yourself, maybe, or at least looking back on just the meme culture, the online edginess, and yeah, maybe, and I guess kind of just talk about how you've evolved and what your thoughts on that type of culture is now.
Yeah, so obviously kind of the Jacobin article makes it much more neat than it actually was, right? So when I went to YPG, and pretty much straight away, because kind of I knew kind of the political stuff, and I like to think I'm relatively well spoken. YPG International like started to use me in kind of propaganda videos and this kind of stuff. Like, in actually what was the most nerve-wracking bit of Rojava, much worse than when I was getting bombed by the Turkish Air Force. Well,
wow.
Not bombed. They were bombing like the next point over.
Yeah.
Was when they asked me to do an academic conference. And so I attended via Skype, like an academic conference in Hamburg, where kind of I spoke about kind of, actually I spoke about the women's kind of military movement. And that was, I was sweating bullets. That was like one of the most anxious moments of my life, because it wasn't just kind of like, like this coming on a podcast, but I was representing, an entire military force, and representing especially kind of the idea of socialist internationalism. And so I was trying really hard to do what I can to kind of represent them well. And this went on, and I left YPG, and for a while I was with DKP, DKP, this Turkish Communist Party. And when I was there, like, I'd been making memes beforehand, Kurdish memes beforehand, and like people in like the YPG community were like, "Oh, who's this person?" Like, they seem to know like a lot of stuff, like what's going on. People thought I was already in Rojava, but then I arrived, and a guy that was a fan of my meme page was in the same communist unit as me, and so he was like, I wasn't making memes at then because I didn't have a laptop, and so he said, "The commander, we've got a spare laptop. Give it to Agit, give it to Stefan, and let them crack on." And so then I transitioned a bit. I was making YPG memes, but I was also making communist. I was making communist DKP memes too. And so I was doing that.
I wanted to ask, actually, Stefan, is
Jason, you good? You good?
Wrong, Jason?
Did Jason get broke?
Let Jason go. He'll
Jason does this every so often. He has to take a little break to.
He called him Thor. He called him Thor Guevara. He called him Thor Guevara.
So, Stefan, what I wanted to ask you is that your experience with the YPG, how has that affected your life post the Rojava experience in terms of what do you have to deal with? What are your concerns? Do you have any concerns in terms of what you are dealing with, coping with the realities of living in the United Kingdom?
So to briefly answer a question in chat, people in YPG, I don't think we have much idea about kind of the culture that's going on, because basically none of them speak English, and they live on kind of a different internet to us. Like Kurds are very into like Bollywood and stuff. They're very into like Indian media and stuff like this. Like it's a whole, they don't really see much of kind of Western internet culture. But in terms of how being in Yepige affected me, well, I mean, apart from the obvious thing is now whenever I go to an airport, I have to speak to the secret police.
That sucks. That sounds like a nightmare.
I was always an early arriver to airports anyway, so it's not that bad. The more annoying thing is when they occasionally steal my electronics. They had this phone for like 9 months. But yeah, so when I arrived back the first time, well, not the first time from Rojava, I only did that once, but when I flew back to the UK for the first time, yeah, I went to a regional airport deliberately so the secret cops would be less informed, and I hoped shitter at their jobs. And so yeah, and I talked to these two people for a few hours. They were very relieved when kind of like they asked me like, "Oh, do you know why I'm taken in?" And I just said yes. I didn't like try to pretend I wasn't, because obviously I was online, like I was visible with what I was doing, so I didn't pretend I wasn't there or anything. And yeah, I was kind of broadly open and honest. Obviously, I left some stuff out that I needed to because I was talking to the police. But yeah, I told them basically what I was doing, specifically not what anyone else was doing, but just what I was doing. And then yeah, subsequently, whenever I go to an airport, I've spoken to these people. I know they've really only played like good cop with me, which is good for me, I guess. Like the one time when I was flying out to Athens, the guy stopped me and was like, "You know, you aren't going to Syria, right?" And I'm like, "No." And we talked for a few minutes, and he was like, "By the way, they hadn't announced the gate number publicly yet, but I guess the police do know them beforehand." So he was like, "Oh yeah, your gate is this one," and so I knew before everyone else. They did these kind of things like to ingratiate themselves or whatever. But yeah, then sometimes they steal my phone and my laptop, and that's it, basically.
Gene, you were telling me about some experiences of persecution that some of these chaps.
Yeah, like if you trained with the wrong people, like if you trained with the PKK, you will get into trouble. And there's been cases by this because this, the British policy is really contradictory on these kind of things. So there was a guy who was convicted for training with the PKK. But of course, as we've kind of pointed out, the boundary between the YPG and the PKK is sometimes not as clear as you might, not as clear as is made out in reality. So some people have trained with the PKK and then gone on to Syria, but have gotten into trouble. I mean, Stefan probably knows more about that than I do.
Yeah, so yeah, one friend was convicted. He didn't train even with PKK. He was just at Makhmur camp, which is a Kurdish refugee camp in Iraqi Kurdistan where the PKK is present. It's like a leftist refugee camp. Like it's mostly, now it's basically only PKK, but like, sorry, I was distracted by the chat.
Sorry.
Used to have like lots of leftist exiles in it. I know because ANF News, one of like the main Kurdish news sites, just published kind of an article by a woman from Gaza who was also, she grew up in Makhmur. But yeah, he was at Makhmur, and so they put him in prison for that because the PKK were there. And a few other friends, they basically, they've even though there's no law against being in Yepige, they've charged like 4 people with being in Yepige, basically just to terrorize them. They knew that the convictions couldn't ever possibly happen. And just before it got to the stage where they'd have to actually go to trial and say their evidence, they just dropped the case. Because for one thing, they know that, obviously we have a jury system here too. They know that no jury in the world is going to convict someone for fighting ISIS. That isn't going to happen. And so they just make these kind of fake prosecutions to kind of terrorize people, and then that's it.
Sounds like a nightmare.
To the person in the chat, yes, the FBA is still recruiting, always recruiting, but at the moment I think it's basically impossible to get there because of the conflict in Iraq.
there's no like maybe you don't even know this since the lockdown happened, but there's no blocks. They're not like blocking Americans because of COVID or anything.
Oh yeah, because of COVID. But if you get vaccinated, it's fine. And I think basically you can get vaccinated very easily now.
I would also make the point there, and this is actually really important to emphasize. At present, Turkey is launching a major operation against the PKK, which is based in basically in the mountain chains that straddle the Turkish Iraqi border, and in cooperation, either openly in cooperation or with the blessing of the Kurdistan regional government, there is a huge Turkish offensive taking place at this moment against the PKK. Turkey is establishing military bases. Turkey has had military bases in Iraq since the 90s, but there's a whole new kind of attempt to seize this mountainous region that the PKK has operated in. Turkey is chopping down forests, looting the region, bombing villages, but it's and it's not really being covered at all by anyone. Although, this is partly because the Iraqi Kurds are complicit in it, because there's no love lost. The most vicious anti-PKK things you will hear is from Iraqi Kurds. Like that's just the big facts.
The KDP arrested a German parliamentarian here. So if they'd arrest him, they'd definitely arrest you. So.
Yeah, they also just banned what's that journalist called? The one who Frederica, the Dutch journalist. Oh, really? Yeah, they just kicked her out of Erbil. I just saw it on Twitter like this moment. I think the only one who's safe, who has good relations, is Vladimir von Wickenburg, who's like he's cool. He's cool with all the Kurds, so he's just a nice guy. He's cool with everybody. I know him. I'm sure you must have come across Vladimir, right?
Yeah. Putin?
There's a journalist called Vladimir von Wickenburg who's Dutch and he speaks Kurdish, and he's like friends with all the Kurds. Like all the Kurds love him.
Gene, I wanted to ask you about those military incursions by the Turks in Kurdistan. Is that being done with the blessing or benign neglect of the United States, or cooperation?
But benign, I would say benign neglect of the United States, because formally the United States counts the PKK as a terrorist organization, right? And Turkey basically, probably the United States would rather that Turkey wouldn't do these things, which are destabilizing. But why would they go to bat for the PKK? They wouldn't. There's no interest in it. It's fundamentally to do with internal Turkish politics. To sum it up very briefly, up until 2015, there was a kind of flirtation between Erdogan and the Kurds as a way to consolidate power. But after 2015, there's a huge shift to the nationalist right. So because they're suppressing the Kurds, it's never bad politics in Turkey to murder Kurds, right? It's always a vote winner.
I think
So the conflict. So the PKK is enemy number one. So Turkey is launching these invasions. Partly, a lot of it is to do not because there's a huge military threat from the PKK or even from the Syrian Kurds, but because they need to permanently fight this war against Kurds, the bad Kurds, in order to sort of strengthen their internal.
So the number
is bona fides.
The number is up. If you guys have a question, you can feel free to call. We're going to take a couple calls. It's early.
And then we should ask about privilege.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I was going to say too, is I think the biggest thing that pissed off Turkey in the eyes of the United States has nothing to do on moral grounds of what they're doing, but it had 100% to do with Erdogan purchasing Turkish or purchasing Russian weapons. Because basically just pissed off about that, and that's all it takes.
I don't really know what the good books on. Oh, you see my accent there, books. The good books to recommend on Rojava are now, because I haven't really read one since 2014, because I got to know it myself. The one back in 2014 was A Small Key Can Open a Large Door, but I don't know if there's better ones now.
There's a good article by Michael Liesenberg on the ideology of Rojava. He's an academic. It's an academic piece because he talks about the kind of contradiction between having a kind of anarchistic political project, being organized by what was historically one of the most centralized political parties in the Middle East. So, there's some good academic work out there. I think Zero Books published a book on Rojava, although I haven't read it. Yeah, Zero Books has a book on Rojava. So I suppose I should plug Zero Books.
Always, right?
I've got. What's your take on Daughters of Kobani?
Wait, is that the picture book? Like it's the photograph?
No, it's the
movie.
the one the Clintons are going to make a TV series about.
Daughters
right.
of Kobani.
I mean, I was talking about the book. I mean, I assume it'll be terrible, unfortunately.
It's less terrible. It was less terrible than I expected. It was less terrible.
If you read the synopsis that kind of Hillary put out, you can tell that kind of the twist at the end is basically going to be Donald Trump bad, Hillary Clinton good.
Oh yeah, that is so true. That is so true. It's all going to be about like how Donald Trump sold out these people. That's going to be the narrative. The actual book isn't terrible. It's like got some good interviews in there.
Oh no, I'm sure the book is great from what I've heard. But I thought you were asking about the.
But the TV series is going to be a Clinton jerk up, and I think you're totally correct. It's going to be Donald Trump bad.
Well, it's going to be like the revamp of Hillary's stint at the State Department, but also isn't it as a collab with her daughter? Like they're both co-executive producers or something like that. So it's just good old girl power.
It's a grift. It's the old Clinton grift. Those guys are the king of the grift.
They are the griftiest.
In terms of class makeup, someone asked in the chat, Yepagay is like nearly exclusively from the even poorer parts of the class makeup of Rojava. PKK has more kind of urban intellectuals, but it's also overwhelmingly kind of like people who grew up quite poor in Kurdistan, be they from cities or be they from rural areas.
What about the makeup of the volunteer soldiers? It just kind of runs the gamut.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really generalize because there wasn't really enough of us, and from so many different countries. Someone asked if there was Asian volunteers.
Yes.
There were Asian volunteers, but basically to join Yepagay, you need to be able to get into Iraqi Kurdistan visa-free, and to get in Iraqi Kurdistan visa-free, you basically need Western citizenship. So all the kind of people that were Black or Asian or whatever, they also had to have like European or North American citizenship.
There was some Black people there.
Yeah, there was a Black French guy. He was cool.
Ah, okay. From France?
Yeah, from France.
That's where French guys come from.
Vive la révolution!
Yeah, right.
I don't know whether to rejoice or be worried that the phone isn't ringing, because that means that when we end the show, people are going to call the phone when it's over. When I'm like,
well, they're just going to call you.
We really have to work out your phone thing because, like, we can't have people calling you after the show going, "Hey, what's up, Jason?"
I wish it was just, "Hey, what's up, Jason?"
Give him Pascal's number. Give him Pascal's number.
Don't do that.
They don't want to smoke, as the young people say.
That would not be very good.
With Stefan's movie, I definitely want to be an extra who's a Turkish soldier who gets shot. I would like to be. I want to do my death scene.
Can I be the Black guy from France?
I think he was about 18, but yeah, sure.
We'll just
pencil thin up that mustache.
Young CGI they do on Luke Skywalker. Young enough.
No, I mean, and like for one, looks like Jason's mom did a good job making sure he lotioned up. The skin looks great.
His skin does look great. It does look great. His taco.
We got a first call.
His taco.
Can you guys hear the call?
Oh, nope.
All right, here it comes. All right, caller, you're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Oh, just hung up.
Damn. We're being prank called.
Someone's been like kind of goofing around, and sometimes I think I might accidentally hang up on people, or they don't understand that there's a process for me to answer the phone. So just so people know, I can't just like answer the phone. I have to press a button and make sure it's tied to the machine so people can hear it and we can hear you. So I'm not, trying to hang up on you, and sorry if I don't answer quick enough, but it takes a minute.
Well,
someone asked about Palestine. I think that's an interesting thing to talk about because people try to use both struggles against each other, and some kind of like unofficial kind of people on Twitter were like, I think, embarrassing themselves, like pro-Kurdish people, over kind of the last Gazan offensive, where kind of this resentful thing of like, oh, why do people care so much about Palestine, but they don't care about us, and so on, which I think is just like grow up a bit. But obviously everything from official party media was completely in favor, completely supportive. PKK really likes to emphasize that in the first Lebanese war, PKK gave 14 martyrs after the Israeli Air Force struck a PKK position in Lebanon, because obviously PKK trained in Lebanon.
PKK's first military actions were against Israel. That's important to emphasize, because I agree. There's a lot of people who embarrass themselves. A lot of Palestinians also embarrass themselves about being anti-Kurdish, and a lot of Kurds embarrass themselves about being anti-Palestinian. But like this is one of my bugbears, because it really annoys me when people are like, I get it. Like my dad,
oppression Olympics.
Oppression Olympics, and you see this on the left as well in the West, where it's like you get a lot of anti-Kurdish stuff because of, but it's just geopolitics. At the same time, the oppressed should stand together and they shouldn't be taking a dump on each other. But I understand why it happens. Hamas is like getting support from Turkey. So they're going to be like.
I think Turkey supports Israel a lot more than you. I mean,
yeah, I know.
Amassing words only.
That's the Erdogan is an anti-Semitic. Is anti-Semitic in his discourse, but he's actually very helpful to Israel in terms of Israel Turkey being a major logistic hub. But there's a lot of virtue signaling in the Middle East about Palestine. They're all shafting the Palestinians, but crying about them and using, like the discourse. Turks will go, Kurds are the second Israel, blah, blah, blah. And you see this amongst certain elements of the American left.
Also, pro-Israeli people are saying that Kurdistan is the second Israel. Like, they want it to be a thing too.
But they mean something different. And then you've got elements of the left. And this is the problem I have with elements of the left, is like the existence of Rojava complicates their narrative about the Syrian civil war. So they either ignore it, or they just attack Rojava for collaborating with the United States. It's like, bro, it's an inter-imperialist conflict. If America is an imperialist country, but so is Russia. And if you want to pretend that Russia is an imperialist country, then it never was. It wasn't an imperialist country in 1914. It's not an imperialist country today. So look, we can all criticize everybody for like their international, for taking international support. But there is a certain faction of the American left who will believe every negative piece of propaganda against Rojava, and then fucking butter up about the Assad regime.
Well,
Rojava is no fucking book. It's not like a perfect institution. And like what I've written about it, I'm not into the big Abdullah Öcalan cult. I'm not, into everything that goes on in Rojava. But if you have to pick a side in that civil war, you've got like Assad, you've got like Al-Qaeda adjacent, and then you've got Rojava. Rojava is head and shoulders above the rest of those countries. And I think there's a lot of interesting things that happen in Rojava, especially in terms of trying to maintain sort of inter-ethnic relations without everybody murdering each other and promoting women's rights. So,
Well, we have a call. We have a call. Caller, what is your name and where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Michael. I'm calling y'all from Mobile, Alabama.
Oh shit!
Hey, Mike.
Is it hot and humid?
It's a nice place, Alabama.
Oh yeah, it's about 90 degrees with 100% humidity.
That is disgusting.
Well, hey.
What is your question and or comment today, homie from.
Well,
the
I
Deep
don't
South.
really have a question, but I really appreciate what you guys are doing on here. I think it's great that, somebody has the ability to take calls, and the audio isn't so great trying to hear you guys through the phone, but so I just wanted to shout you guys out, say you're doing a great job. I really appreciate all the discussions that you have on here, from metal to people going to Rojava to the history of all these different places, and you're doing a good job. Keep it up, guys. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and stay
All right.
cool in hot ass Alabama. I will see you sooner than you think.
Since you said something nice, this is the only time I'm going to say it. Just for you, Mike. Roll Tide.
Oh, boo, War Eagle.
Okay.
You don't know where motherfuckers is coming from. Peace out, Mike.
All right. Hey, well, screw it. Yeah, War Eagles then. Yeah.
Hey, you
Saban's a jerk.
Sweet home Alabama.
Get fucked up over some silly shit over there.
Man, I tried. I reached. That's why you
Don't
never
get fucked up. Just call out the SEC. That's all you need to know. Just call out the SEC.
Oh, that people are asking about the gray zone in the chat.
No comment.
No comments on the gray zone.
No comment.
We do not comment on the gray zone.
I've Brace is an acquaintance. We talk occasionally. I thought the Rolling Stone article was fine. Obviously, it mischaracterized Brace, who's a Maoist, as an anarchist. And I don't really know that Brace likes the article, but a friend ended up joining Yippee because he read that article. So,
oh wow,
it works.
Somebody else called and hung up. So,
I did have one question though. When you spoke a little bit about women's liberation, but in that Jacobin article, they also talk about like some LGBTQ issues that had come up. So I guess I wonder too, if like to what extent are there those same type of protections, considerations for the queer community as there are for women?
It doesn't really as kind of a social grouping. Like LGBT people haven't really arrived yet in Rojava as like a significant group. So when PYD took control, they got rid of like Assadist laws, the government's laws that like prohibited homosexuality or whatever, but then haven't really done anything further than that. Like in North Kurdistan, in Turkish Kurdistan, the Kurdish freedom movement is quite linked to the LGBT movement. HDP, the kind of Kurdish leftist party, is the closest group, is the most pro-LGBT group of any major Turkish party. But obviously, it's not.
Let me tell you about.
It's not Tel Aviv, as the people say.
Yeah.
But let me tell you.
Deep State got it.
As Haval 7 is telling, in Turkey, the LGBTQ movement is quite advanced, at least by Middle Eastern standards. And the HDP, which is kind of was originally the Kurdish political party, at least, more recently has kind of transformed itself into a kind of Syriza Corbynite Labour Party that kind of unites the radical left in Turkey. So LGBTQ issues are like central to the HDP in Turkey. So, you have that going on there. In Iraqi Kurdistan, I had a friend, I'm not going to name him. His name, we used to call him Mr. Velvet because he would go down to the bazaar and he would just hook up with dudes in the bazaar all the time, man. Like, they had like this guy, I don't know how he did it. There was a wink and a nod, and the next thing you know, like Mr. Velvet is, back in the house with some like 22-year-old guy who's going to get married the next week. So there's a lot of gay stuff going on in the Middle East. It's just people don't identify as being gay, right?
Sounds like Atlanta.
Sounds like, well, people don't like. There's no word in traditional Kurdish for gay. You have like in Turkish, Hencin said and stuff like that, which is like a neologism. Which is a recently word, but like for homosexual, they used to call him kunde, or getberen, which literally means he who gives the ass, and that. But that's like
what was that name again?
But there isn't a concept. There isn't like a concept of a gay identity in the Middle East, right? There isn't a concept of the gay identity. But of course, it's changing now. You know, like because a lot of this stuff was suppressed. People had to be. I mean, Jason knows all about being on the DL, right? That's the thing.
What?
Oh, am I bringing things up? And sorry.
What? Why would you say that? First of all, why would you say that?
No, I'm just saying in African American culture, isn't there like a concept of being
Nigga,
what?
Oh, you're talking.
Like, you know, the way you said that makes it sound like I'm the one giving all the ass.
Oh, I apologize.
No, you did on purpose. You've been living in this.
I didn't mean to imply that. Why are you being like this? Buddy?
Look, I'm being like this because, first of all, we try to watch what we say here because
there's like the Israeli propaganda does so much pinkwashing about what goes on, and like the disgusting thing is that the Israeli intelligence services like attack Palestinian gay Palestinian activists by threatening to out them and stuff like that. So the Middle East, you know, there's a lot of, you know, the issue in the Middle East isn't that people don't engage in homosexual activity. It's that it's very hypocritical and it's like very culture, you know, like there's a lot of cultural suppression and stuff like that. And a lot of this stuff is not like, you know, homosexuality was very much tolerated in Islamic society right up till the 19th century. But then you have this like peculiar cross-pollination of like Victorian morality and sort of fundamentalist Islam at the same time, which leads to this like radical reorientation towards, you know, like how homosexuality is tolerated. It's not that people would go around.
While Gene is taken up by the deep state, we have a call. Caller, what's your name and where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Abby. I'm calling from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Oh.
I used to get mess with Marcus a little bit, you know.
Go for it. Hello?
Hey. Hi.
Now we can hear you.
Okay.
So you want to mess with Marcus?
Yeah.
This is one of my mods from my
Oh,
channel.
got you. Okay.
And also our best memer. So I was happy that Abby was at least able to watch a little bit of the show to see how your like memes can drive revolution.
Now you know.
Yeah.
Shit's real.
Well, I just thought it'd be fun to call in. So
it's always fun to call in.
Yeah.
Abby, it's always fun to call in. Oh, Abby hung up. Hang up.
Just call in saying hi.
Oh no, there you go. Abby?
Yeah, I'm still hanging in here.
Oh, okay. Oh, she hung up. So, did you want to just yell at Marcus some more for not giving you free merchandise?
Yeah, Marcus, I have not received my koozie. I have not received a koozie. I had to purchase my other t-shirt.
I had asked all of our mods.
I hear that.
This is just awful.
The mods get free
it's
stuff
not okay.
all the time.
Jason, I don't mess with your mods and your channel, but I will.
I don't have a mod anymore. He went and started his own podcast.
Oh,
I think that's like a natural progression.
Well, hey, Abby, here you go. Now you've been moved over.
I was like, why is somebody monitoring this chat and so many people are calling me the N-word? And then I was like, oh, because our moderator's gone. I'm just kidding. No one's calling me the N-word.
One thing I was going to say that in Yepagay, if you get caught in a homosexual relationship, you'll get punished much less than if you get caught in a heterosexual relationship.
Oh, John's still here. Good, John. Good. You need to be here. I saw that you that was in one of the articles I read about you was that you had said that, Stefan, that if you got caught in a homosexual relationship opposed to a heterosexual relationship, it was less punishment.
Yeah, because if you like getting a heterosexual relationships are like strictly forbidden, because they think if that starts, then it won't end anywhere well. Just kind of with like dissolutions of units. People also, it's about not just kind of like lots of people in Yepigei and like the senior people are what we call cadre. Like they're forbidden from owning property, they're forbidden from marrying, and all this stuff. And this is for life, And if you're in a couple, then it's like kind of against comradeship, it's against havalti, because kind of you care for this person more than you care for everyone else. But yeah, like if you get caught in a heterosexual relationship, especially as the man, you'll be in a lot of trouble. But in a homosexual relationship, they just kind of separate. They're like, damn, that's crazy, and just separate you and send you to different units.
There's also I remember in Iraq there was some YPG women, and they were at a conference, and there was this one lady she was like in her 40s, and she had like gold teeth, and it was like I remember just looking, I was like, this woman is here with her girlfriend, and like people don't realize that she's like here with her girlfriend. Like this like hardcore gold teeth veteran woman.
Just because she had Doc Martens does not mean anything.
No, she was like, she had her girlfriend. They were, and she was flirting with the other women, and it was like the Iraqi Kurds didn't know what the hell was going on. I mean, if you knew what to look for, it's like very obvious, because also if you're lesbians exist in the Middle East. Lesbians are often erased when we talk about the LGBTQ movement. We often focus on homosexuality amongst men, but there's a lot of women as well who engage in these who have relationships too, and that's more doable in the Middle Eastern context. More doable in the Middle Eastern context. But I just remember like standing there going like, this woman is here with her 25-year-old girlfriend, and like they've clearly come as like a holiday from the front together to Suleimania, and like nobody else seemed to like, everyone was just couldn't comprehend or fathom or comprehend it, so it was it
works out is what you guys are saying. Ultimately it works out because people are kind of oblivious to it. It's
better than being in like the Islamic Republic of Iran or in Assad, Syria, where they will like put you in jail and torture you and beat you up or things like that. It's all relative, right? It's all relative. That's like going to places with my Midwestern boomer grandparents. Yeah, that's actually true.
Some people like don't really believe that people in Yepigei like aren't fucking, but I mean, I'm sure Marcus is familiar with military scuttlebutt, that people will say whatever, but from like the slightest thing, it becomes the hugest thing. But this is how little fucking there's going on in Yepigei, that there wasn't even a rumor that anyone that we knew had sex. And in military, there's always a rumor about something, but there wasn't a rumor about anyone having sex. There wasn't a rumor about anyone like making out, or like not even a rumor about like someone trying something or anything. There was absolutely nothing.
Yeah. That seems very interesting because I mean, the idea that loose lips sink ships is like, that's just true. And so the idea that they're not even like talk, rumors, oh, did you hear this, you hear that, because I served in all male units. Like there was, and when I served the Marine Corps, there was no women allowed in combat arms or especially like the infantry, and so there was just whole little different structure. But at the end of the day, this is the little bit of talk is there's always a little kernel of truth, but at the end of the day, I don't think there's the scuttlebutt. I haven't heard that term in so long since I've been in the military. But
Jim, you want scuttles on your butt, Marcus? What did you say?
That is the scuttlebutt. That is
the scuttlebutt. It's the watering hole. What do they try to say that in the office? The water cooler talk or some shit like that.
It's the person who does all the rumors. The rumor person.
Yeah. What's the scuttlebutt?
What's scuttlebutt? But yeah.
So someone asked about the relationship between the cadre system and kind of like traditional Kurdish values, but I don't really know enough. That's the thing. Like now, I guess I'm like in some ways I know more about Kurdish culture and stuff, but like I'm not like a Kurdish fan. I'm not like a Kurdish LARPer. Like I don't really know that much about about Kurdish history, apart from what I was taught and what I tried to learn to serve. Like, it's for me, like it's weird to say, but it's less about the Kurds and just generally about kind of socialist internationalism.
Gotcha.
To a comment, I'll say that, and also going back, like on a Navy ship, when I was deployed on a Navy ship, that's when like all types of shit was going on. Everybody knew. You would find remnants of sexual action. While like make sure go down in the well deck, check the Humvees, make sure everything's locked up, and then you see that people have enjoyed themselves in this area.
Saying you would find ejaculate? Is that what you're saying? Yes.
Someone mentioned cum Gatorade, and that was horrible flavor.
There was a bottle, and there was a sign next to it that said, "Thanks for the fuck check," signed Dirty Mike and the Boys, which is a reference to a movie. But yeah, there is quite a bit of sex going on in the United States military, and a whole lot of rumor mill to go along with it.
Well, we got this will be our last call for the day. Gene, where's Gene Bajlan go? He just up and left. He had to go yell at his child. That's why. Caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's John Ross.
MFing John Ross, podcast host, moderator to the stars extraordinaire.
You never thought you're never going to get rid.
All right, that's fine. Look, that's fine. That's fine.
Thought I would leave you.
My feelings were not hurt. Put it this way, my feelings were not hurt. I had nothing negative to say. I was like, oh, fucking got his own show. I mean, shit. It's easier.
I worked it out where I could do.
Perfect.
I worked it out where I could do my own show. I'm good.
Are you enjoying the show today?
I am definitely enjoying the show. I'm kind of new to this whole call-in feature, so I just wanted to pop in and see how it works.
I'm trying to up the game here on This Is Revolution, and we can have a call-in feature because I enjoy the chat. But as you've been watching the show today, there's been a couple of comments that made me laugh so hard I snorted a few times.
Right.
So
you don't mean cocaine.
I don't mean cocaine. I mean laughing, because that is some hilarious shit that some of the people said, especially this comment about Marcus and his favorite drink while in the service. So,
shot fired! Shot fired! Shot fired!
It's got a lot of protein in it. I lifted a lot of weights. So
you're like, God damn, I feel so strong. It's like steroids, this stuff.
This ain't milk. That's all right. Yeah, that's all right. Make fun of me. I'll lean into it. I will lean into it.
Hey, that's the way you're supposed to do it.
Yeah, right.
That's nasty.
Uh-oh. You have a proposition? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying, show of hands, should I show my face on the live show just to show people who would know who I am? Because I sit and moderate your show all 3 days a week, and it's just like I just kind of want people to show my face,
I personally, and you're not going to believe me, but I'm being totally serious. I liked it better to a certain extent. I enjoyed it more when it was just an audio only, and I didn't have to show my face, because people start seeing all kinds of shit around you, and they start noticing the shirts you wear, and they it's a lot of shit that I didn't think I was gonna have to care about, and I miss the days of not wearing pants when I talk to people.
Yeah, I like video recording so I can see the people I'm talking to, but then not uploading the video,
It is a lot better to talk to someone whose face you can see. Like, people hate on like Zoom and all these things, but I do think it's made these kind of conversations a lot better, because it's so weird talking over the phone. A couple of years ago, for example, I did like there was like a radio documentary in Australia for the Australian BBC, whatever they call it over there. And they were asking me all these questions over the telephone. And it was so difficult because like you couldn't look at people's facial cues to like see what exactly they were saying. So I was like, what? And, Australians are hard to understand at the best of times, but over their telephone call made it difficult. So I like seeing people's. I like seeing.
When I started doing this, I was doing this in studio. So I missed the fact of being like in with people, and then if someone wants to cut someone off, you can. There's physical cues to give. That's what the shit that I fucking miss so much. I wear pants. I make it a point to actually have jeans on. I don't wear sweats. And someone says, well, we can't see anyway. Trust me.
I got jeans on right now.
See? And nobody even knows. You can have the bing bang out. You can have the aardvark out right now. Nobody would know.
Bing bang. Aardvark.
You've been talking to your kid too much.
Bing bang.
Put your whistle thing away.
Jason's just mad that he can't stop Pascal talking. That's what he's mad about. He's like,
I can't do this to Pascal.
It's like, no, Pascal, don't do it. Don't do it.
Don't mouth again. That's the hard part. Other than that, yeah, if you want to show your face and have, because people are gonna like it and some people are gonna hate it, and I'm just like, look, man, whatever. I'm gonna do this more often than not.
I do want to ask another question too. Well, and like we haven't even got, we haven't scratched the privilege discussion at all. But or if we will. But I kind of did want to, just like with like they're taking your story, they're making some the movies and all this type of stuff about it. Like, where do you see yourself in historical context? Have you thought about like where your story is going to end up or anything like that? Have you done any type of like introspection on your own place, and yeah, have you come to any conclusions, or is it just kind of like, hey, this is my life?
Can I just jump in here?
I was going to say, damn, not really.
Mention this is how I got to know Stefan on the internet. Actually, I posted something on Twitter about Rojava movies because there's a couple of them. And then he sent me a message about because I was complaining about how the Rojava movies are all pretty bad.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I mean,
yeah. Obviously, I mean, I think the movie is going to be, well, it might be really bad. They can always happen, even if you've got great people involved. But I think it will be very kind. Like, and to be clear, like, I guess you guys seem to be aware of this, but I think some people, when they hear there's going to be a movie, they think it's going to be like an indie film. It's not. Like, you're gonna be able to see this in cinemas. Like, it's an 8-figure project, big money, big actors, hopefully a big director. It's gonna be a serious.
I think I figured out who's playing. I think I figured out who's playing you, and when we're off air, I'm gonna guess it when we're off air, because I think I figured it out. I've been staring. You can't see me staring at you, but I've been staring at you like, who does this?
The thing is there's another actor that could play me that looks more like me than the one it was. So you're probably going to guess them, but we'll see what happens.
I think I know who it is. I think I know who it is. Marcus, do you think?
Yeah, like it's less kind of about about me and my legacy, but I hope the film can be kind of like a really big thing. Because one question that was written to me that we didn't say, you guys didn't end up asking, was like, what do you think about kind of the Western obsession with YPG, with the women fighters? And I'm like, I'm surprised by how weak and how little the obsession is. Like, there's like a women's army for the first time in history. Yeah. There's a girl boss army out there. Yeah. And Western feminists don't really even care that much. Like, some of them do, but 99% of them have probably never heard of YPG. It should be like one of the craziest historical events that's ever happened, and people aren't really that interested. So I think, no, the problem isn't kind of a Western obsession with YPG. It's like there isn't really enough of an obsession. There should be a way bigger obsession. People should be going nuts for it. Yeah.
Would you
So
feel?
I hope my film, and I hope, yeah, like I was saying to Gene before, that kind of, I hope that, you know, I if I can, like, try and like push Hollywood to make a film about, you know, like a young Kurdish girl that grows up in a village, and then goes on to become a fighter and is involved in this war. I think on a personal level, because obviously to me my life is boring, right? Because I live it. But the idea of like a film about like a Kurdish girl growing up, joining a guerrilla force, and doing all these things is like an insanely cool idea to me.
People are guessing on the chat. Did you have something else you wanted to say, John?
No, I just wanted to say hi and say I got the shirt, although it is a little small for me. So
I'm sorry.
No, it's all right.
I can send another one. I can send a larger one.
Yeah, extra large.
Extra large?
Well, if you got, I like extra large clothes.
Okay.
If you got a hoodie too, that would work.
I'll look. I think I might have sent the last one like that to Marcus. That's like band merch, but the show is based off the band, so of course. All right,
and
John.
I also wanted to say hi
go
to
ahead.
Gene. I want to say hi to Gene, fellow Missourian.
Hey.
I'm from St. Louis, right? I'm from Kansas City.
Yeah, Gene's in Springfield, which
Springfield, baby. I'm in Springfield, Missouri. I call Springfield Missouri's version of Hull. It's basically Missouri's version of Hull.
he's actually you're like 2 hours away from it. Yeah, you're like 2 hours away.
2.5 hours. Yeah, you got to get down that road to the exciting world of Springfield, Missouri.
So I want a picture of you two eating barbecue at Gates Barbecue.
Yeah, definitely.
Jason, is there a spot in a town that you don't know, man? Oh my God.
This guy knows everywhere.
That's what touring does.
I've been touring for years. Very, very, very poor guy touring for years. So all you know is like where good, affordably priced food is.
Okay, so guys.
All right, John, take it easy, John. We're about to get off.
All right, y'all have a good Saturday.
Thanks, John. Peace, John. Thank you. I got to send him a bigger hoodie.
We've got to get, if we're not going to have time to talk about it today, we've got to get Stefan to come back and talk about his privilege PhD.
We could have done a whole show, Stefan, on privilege shit, but then people would have been mad because we wouldn't have talked about you and the movie deal and why Chris Hemsworth is.
I think the show was important because we clarified terms and really put in context a lot of niche subjects that many people were not aware of about the Kurdish the Kurdish struggle, and I think it was very important. I think it was a valuable show. And Stefan, I'm really glad you hear Gene as well for adding context.
This whole who's playing you in the movie thing is funny. I in my mind I have a guess who it is in my mind. I'm probably hella wrong.
We all know it's Chris Hemsworth.
When they called you Thor Rivera, that was the funniest.
It's funny because I've got a photograph which is even more Thor than that one.
Well, for real? Are you holding a hammer?
Yeah, I am holding a hammer.
Oh shit!
The pictures from the Jacobin article, I was like, God damn, that was a professional shoot, right?
I was ready for another bottle of Gatorade. Those are nice pictures.
I mean, some of them were taken by my friend who's a photographer. New York boy.
That motherfucker's a G.
He was the one. Oh no, it wasn't him actually.
Great eye.
Hey, if Sun Lake CBD wants to sponsor the show, I think that would be amazing. Someone's saying about that in the chat.
If Come Gatorade wanted to sponsor the show. When you're feeling dehydrated and a little low on protein.
Holy shit.
But yeah, we've got to have Stefan back on to talk about his privilege PhD because that sounds super interesting.
Indeed. When is it scheduled to be finished, Stefan?
So I'm just finishing my first year now. So I was looking for the hammer photo, but I can't find it.
Hammer photo.
Well, and I guess, Stefan, I'd like to ask maybe if there's, and like we can obviously do this, later on, but just connections with, some of the women that are fighting or even that, have experience and, can share their stories as well, because, that, like hella important, super dope. So, yeah. I think everyone here would be happy to, continue on the conversation and get into depth with, sharing that story. So.
And on that note, I think we're ready. Once you hear that music, the show's winding down. We want to thank Stefan for taking the time to talk to us all the way from the UK. Jean Bajlan made a special appearance to come on and talk with us on a Saturday when he's supposed to be with his family, put the family on hold for this conversation, so I appreciate that. Marcus, ditto with you. I appreciate that.
Always happy to be here.
Pascal, his pullout game is on point, and he has no children.
Oh, that full bottle.
That full bottle. You get the full. Thank you. No, Jason is square as fuck. I don't partake in anything. I don't even drink.
He doesn't even drink.
I'm boring as shit.
Pascal needs to market his shit. He can call it Martin Luther Cream.
Oh my God. Whew. Thank you guys for making this Saturday a hell of a lot better than I thought it was going to be, because my phone started ringing very early in the morning. And I was like, man, I didn't put the fucking number up. I got to change that shit again.
You need a SIM card, which you like a stream SIM card that you just take out and then no one can call it when it's not in.
A burner.
I fucked up, and I was so nervous that I did the whole thing on my phone instead of doing it on like an iPad or the computer, which probably would have been a lot easier. So I'll take that L. But on that note, yeah, this is a dope song. And who made it? Me. You know why? Because I can't afford to pay for licensing. And on that note, before we're out, thank you, John Ross, for sticking around. I appreciate you. And I will look for an extra large. I think I have an extra large hoodie. I'll double, triple check. But it'll be the last one of its kind. Again, thank you. Sorry, can't take that call. And thank you guys for participating in the chat. We'll see you guys Tuesday. We'll talk about racism and AI.
Oh, wow.
Right? And we are out.